1, 2, 3.
Full R&B ballin' for all y'all to see. Full R&B ballin' for all y'all to see.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go With The Flow, recording here on Saturday, April 2nd, 2022. I usually forget to say when the date is when I say it way too late in the episode. But two very special guests in the building with me. I have Pat Glory and Quincy Monday, wrestling superstars. You guys are superstars. I don't know if you know that, but you guys have been doing exactly what you needed to do. Saw y'all wrestling on ESPN the other day, and I was like, I need them on the podcast, need them on Go With The Flow. But the way that I start every single episode, I ask my guests to introduce themselves, tell me where they're from, stuff they do around campus, and then just any other general intro they would want the people to know. Mm-hmm. So just take it away, guys.
Word. I'm Quincy Monday, a junior on the wrestling team. I also am the vice president of the Black Student Athlete Collective, and I do some stuff with health professionals advising, jock docs.
Are you pre-med?
Yeah.
Oh, snap. Love to see it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm Pat Glory. I'm also a junior. Quincy's my roommate. And I am a econ major, finance certificate from Randolph, New Jersey, about an hour north of here. Yeah, honestly, I'd like to say I'm involved on more on campus things, but
honestly,
school and wrestling takes up so much time.
I was about to say, I get it. You guys, and I've spoken about it many times on this podcast, varsity athletes, your schedules are so insane that even if you said just wrestling and nothing else, we get it. You don't need to be in 16 different clubs like I'm in and everyone else is. But okay, you guys are both multiple-time All-Americans. You just wrapped up your season a few weeks ago, NCAA championships. And so just first question right off the bat is, after a long, grueling season, how long do you typically give yourselves before you're back to the training? Or is it season ends one day, the very next day you're back in the gym?
Yeah, so our coaches they've been here for, over a decade now, and throughout the years they've kind of tweaked and played around with their training plans and everything. They've done this so long now that I feel like they know kind of how much time we need and like kind of when it's time to get back on the mat after the season. So this is like our end of our second week from NCAAs. We got back 2 Sundays ago. This will be the second Sunday upcoming. They usually say 2 weeks. So this coming week will probably be our first week back to wrestling, back lifting and stuff like that. The rest of the guys that didn't go to NCAAs started up last week, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. Just doing the off season. We in season we lift twice a week. Off season we lift 3 times a week. In season we're wrestling 4 to 5 times a week. Off season it's like 3 or 4 maybe. So the training schedule changes a little bit, but just kind of like the actual training cycle kind of starts like that.
Yeah, I'd say so the training we do in the summer is geared towards freestyle, and it's not through the school. It's a ton of different style of wrestling that we do in college. It's like the international style, what they do in like the World Championships and in the Olympics. And so our training's geared toward that and like kind of these off-season tournaments. And so I'd say it's not as much of a grind because we're not competing as much. Like we're out of season, and so but we're still working out. We're still kind of staying in shape and just like focusing on technique. But yeah, it was a long season. It was pretty tough. But they have a good training plan for us. I think they kind of tweak it every year, and so I kind of at the end of the year, I think I ended up coming out of it not too bad. I'm feeling pretty healthy, thankfully. So yeah, we'll have this next week. Probably be back on the mats next week.
In those last 2 weeks, have you been eating all the junk food, getting all that in your system right now?
Everything that I wanted to have when I was cutting weight, I'm eating it now, and so yeah, we're living it up right now.
Yeah, it gets really bad because I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, wow, it's like a complete waste.
Different person.
During the season. Yeah. But it's awesome. Like, me and Quincy literally were counting down the weigh-ins that we had left in the beginning of the season. Like, all right, 12 weigh-ins left. Like, we're almost there. So definitely look forward to getting to eat and be chubby.
Yeah, for sure.
You see us walking around campus and our face is a little fat. We got maybe 2 extra plates of food. That's saying nothing to us.
And so taking it all the way back for the both of you, how did you both get into wrestling? Because I don't know where on the list of popular sports it is in the country, but I don't think it's the most popular sport. It's more of a niche sport, I would say. Definitely. So how did each of you get into wrestling?
Yeah, so I got into wrestling when I was about 5 or 6. I was always connected to it though, because my dad was a big time wrestler. He wrestled at Oklahoma State in college, and then he went on to win an Olympic gold medal and a silver medal in 1988 and 1992. And so he was, of course, a big wrestler. And my family, I have an older brother. He was into it as well. My dad ran a youth club, and so my brother started a couple years before me. When he was of age, and I was always just going with them to practices, and so I couldn't wait to get on the mats myself. But yeah, so I've always kind of been around it.
Yeah, my dad, like, he's one of 4 brothers, so there's like four boys in his family. So they've always been scrappers. So he wrestled in high school. Wasn't like super successful, but just like he knew that it was something that helped him, physically, mentally, schedule wise and everything. So got me into it at a young age. I was kind of always like the smallest guy for my weight and like percentile and all that stuff. So it was hard to play like a lot of these, big time team sports like football or basketball, lacrosse, whatever it may be. I was afraid of getting hit by a baseball, so I couldn't play baseball. Wrestling was like the only thing that I could actually like give myself a competitive, advantage or, at least be on a level playing field. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just kind of like liked it because of that naturally, and then right around when I was like 7 or 8, started like going to clubs and doing the kind of like national scene stuff. And then it just kind of took off from there.
Gotcha. And Quincy, you mentioned that your dad is a 2-time Olympian, won a gold medal, and gold and silver, you said?
Yeah.
Gold and silver. And did you feel any pressure growing up because of who your dad was? Who your dad is?
Yeah, I'd say there's pressure, but I think how you kind of like view that pressure and your perspective on it can kind of change a lot, and like how you kind of react to that. And so I kind of acknowledge the pressure, just like something that I could strive for. Like he reached the highest of the highs in the sport, and kind of reached the pinnacle in the sport. And so I didn't see it as like, oh, if I don't reach those, then it's a failure. Like I'm a disappointment. But I'm thinking of it as like he's provided me the opportunity to like learn from him and like be connected to a lot of like of the top wrestlers in the sport and like have all these opportunities. And so just doing as much as I can with it in my own way. Kind of taking my own path and making my own footsteps with it. Yeah,
and this is a question for the both of you. Quincy, I know that you mentioned that your dad was coaching at UNC when you were recruiting and making your commitment, and your dad wrestled, or your brother was he wrestled at UNC. How did you both decide where you wanted to go, and ultimately why did you both choose Princeton?
Yeah, my brother was at UNC. He wrestled at UNC, and my dad actually took a job out to UNC at the same time my brother decided to go to school there. So we all moved out there. I was in North Carolina for my last 2 years in high school. I was in Texas before that. But yeah, so we moved to North Carolina, and I was around the program a lot, like around all the coaches. We actually like knew the coaches at UNC, like most of the coaching staff already from when we lived in Oklahoma, and like the Oklahoma State connections with my dad. And so it was like we were real close to all of them. And I figured I would be going to UNC. But Princeton reached out to me, I think towards the end of my junior year. And I had always like kind of been inclined toward academics, and kind of held that in high regard. And so I thought it was interesting, and I was intrigued. And so I came and took a visit, and I liked the coaching staff a lot. The team was cool. And so I just kept an open mind about it. And as I got closer and closer towards the deadline, it's funny, the Princeton coaches gave me like 48 hours to decide because I was taking so long with my decision. But at the end of the day, I kind of wanted to kind of carve my own path a little bit. And I didn't want to look back in 10 years and be like, damn, I should have like challenged myself and like gone to Princeton and like seen what I could do with it. And so I'm glad I made the choice I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, for me, I kind of started the recruiting process early. My mom is like kind of crazy about, making sure that we made the right decision. So she started taking me like on unofficial visits, like everywhere that I would even consider going, like before the coaches even reached out to me. I had a direct connection to Princeton just because so many of the guys from my high school came and like were committed and wrestled here and stuff. So I would come down for matches, come down to like wrestling camps and stuff here. I mean, it's only an hour away, so it's like, and their program was on the on the come up, during my recruiting years. So, just as the process went on, like I was looking for the school with the best academics and the best wrestling, and the coaching staff was awesome. The little guy coach, Coach Dubuque, he's also from my area in New Jersey, so like just really similar personalities, and like he was a 2-time national champ. So it's like it was pretty easy in that sense. And then the other, 2 kind of associate / head coaches are also New Jersey guys. So it was basically like a home away from home for me. And it was like far enough away that it didn't feel like I was like in my backyard, but still close enough that it's like I can go home on the weekend if I want to, or like go see my little brother or sister play high school, sports. And yeah, I just love the team culture. Yeah, it was just awesome.
Yeah, and for me, it's I actually do quite literally go to school in my backyard because I'm also from Jersey, but I live 10 minutes away from here.
Oh, okay.
10 minutes, wow.
10 minutes away. It is that close. And
where are you from? What town?
West Windsor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're literally right here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's literally
like
the neighboring
the
town from
over.
Princeton.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Were you looking other places, or did you kind of always know you wanted to go to Princeton?
I actually never wanted to go to Princeton.
Really?
So when we moved from Nigeria when I was 9 years old, and we lived in North Carolina for 2 years. My mom went to Duke Law School.
Oh,
so
wow.
Duke was the first university that I knew in the country, and it was always my dream school.
Yeah.
And I don't think I appreciated Princeton enough because it was right in my backyard. For me, it was like Harvard's a good school, MIT, Stanford, but Princeton, I was like, it's literally my backyard. I go to Nassau Street. I've been going to Nassau Street since I was in middle school, so I did not appreciate it. And then it wasn't until college application started, and my parents were like, "You're applying to Princeton. It's the best school in the country. It's in your backyard." And so things worked out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you moved from Nigeria at 9?
Yeah.
How was that?
It was that. See, this is why I like when people ask, because I've never actually spoken about this on this podcast, but it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
And actually, this is what I wrote my college, my Common App essay about, and the transition of being in a place where everyone else looks like you, so being the majority, to then coming to America and being the minority. It was definitely a stark contrast, and one that I think because I was so young when I moved, I was able to be more naive to maybe some of the things that maybe I shouldn't have taken as slightly as I did. And then as I just became more and more mature, I would like reflect on my time when I first moved and been like, some of the stuff the kids didn't say that wasn't all right, this wasn't that, but because I was so young and just naive and so just open to everything else, I was like, okay, excited to be here. We moved where my cousins were living, so I was like, okay, it's cool, like really close to my cousins now. And then I think we were able to adjust pretty fast because I have 2 older brothers. One moved when he was a freshman in high school, so a little bit of a tougher transition for him because that was much later. I was in 4th grade, and then my middle brother, he moved when he was 7th grade. So again, so much easier. So for each and every single one of us, the transition was just that much different.
Yeah, that's crazy. Y'all have probably like different like perspectives on how that went based on like how young y'all were when you came in.
Exactly, and I was just in Nigeria last weekend for my dad's birthday, and it's so interesting how every time that we all go back, it's just that exactly what you're saying. The reflecting on both our time there and then our time since we've moved here, and how different it had been for every single one of us.
Yeah, gotcha.
So interesting stuff. And this is why I like it when people ask me questions too. And all the hours and hours I've done, never actually spoken about that. So thank you.
Crazy.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. So has Nigeria changed? Like since you lived there, like you said you just went back this past weekend. Like, is there anything like major noticeable changes between how it was when you lived there and now?
I wouldn't say anything noticeably different. I think what changes is my growth and my maturity, and so I'm just able to notice more and more every time I go back. So, because I think at a certain level, things haven't really changed that much. But it was we moved when I was 9 years old. The last time I went back before this current trip was summer of 2017, so summer for a senior of high school, and I think that was when I was like, I want to say I was like more mature, so then I was able to be like more appreciative of certain things like I have here that I didn't have there, and then even there we're pretty well off, so just stuff that I had there that not everyone else had, and then even just going back this past week again, it's like, okay, you get more thankful for where you come from, having a certain culture, all these different types of things. So I wouldn't say it's the country changing as much as my perspective is changing. As I'm growing, I'm starting to notice more and appreciate different things. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So both of you mentioned that one of the reasons that you wanted to come to Princeton was the whole team aspect. And wrestling is one of those sports, kind of like track, where I'm always interested in the fact that it's a team sport, but you all compete individually. So how exactly does being a part of a team motivate you both individually and just bring you both to that next level when you are on the mat competing?
Yeah, team, I think, is kind of underrated, like the team aspect of wrestling, because of course, like when you see matches, it's one guy versus one guy. But just into the training that takes place, being like in a practice room with like a group of guys and like going through these hard practices and like cutting weight together. You're just kind of like in the trenches with your brothers almost, and so the team aspect is really important. And we had a couple guys who kind of played a big part in like kind of changing the vision and the trajectory of this program. And so those guys were like some good leaders for us to like come into and like kind of learn from. And it's crazy to me now that we come back and like we're finally back after COVID and like our gap years, because we went from being like the younger guys on the team to kind of stepping into this leadership role and like being away from the whole team for a while. And so I think we're still kind of trying to learn how to do that. And I think I'm kind of getting to the point like we're about to be seniors next year, and like I think as captains we kind of like I'm kind of like realizing more that we're kind of shaping like the next generation of like Princeton wrestlers and like what that team and what the trajectory looks like. And so just being able to be in a position to do that and kind of like shape kind of like the future of Princeton wrestling, I think it's really important to us, and we really want to like push the culture in a good direction that's getting better every year.
Yeah, and it's cool that you guys are both aware of the type of impact that you're able to have, because kind of like you said, you came in, there were probably guys on the team that you looked up to that were the reason that you committed here, and now you're realizing that, okay, recruits come, they're looking at me, they are someone, or we are people that whatever we do is going to determine how exactly this program goes forward. So it's good that you're able to have that type of foresight, because I know some people might think just like, oh, me, like I want to do what I need to do to get out of here and just be the best that I can. But you guys
it's so hard, because it is so hard to do that, even just like when you are just looking at yourself and trying to do that in a place like this at Princeton. And so, I think it's a position of like privilege that we have that opportunity to do that, but it's also pretty important. Yeah.
I think, one of the main points of emphasis for us was making sure that like everybody on the team is kind of like heard and like accounted for, because I think a lot of the times, right, we have these 10 starters and the coaches give them priority because, like, again, they're the guys that are going to be out there competing.
See, I didn't even know there were starters. I thought everyone wrestled all the time. I don't.
Yeah. So just kind of like breakdown. So there's 10 weight classes, and only one guy on the team can wrestle like per dual meet at that weight, or even like a tournament, right? So there's kind of a fight, between some of the guys on the team for these spots, these weight classes, right? Because some of them are kind of just taken up by guys like Quincy and other guys that are just kind of like the starter. Yeah. And then there's kind of these toss-up weights that like, maybe three guys are competing against each other for. And then so the one guy gets the spot, right? And then these other two guys that are right on the cusp of getting that spot are kind of like, we want to make sure that those guys are still accounted for, because you never know what's going to happen to the kid that did win the spot. Maybe he gets hurt, right? And then if that kid wasn't staying ready because he thought he wasn't the starter,
then he can't step up.
Then we're not ready, and we're not going to be able to put somebody that we can actually have compete, well for us out there. So I think it's, as opposed to just worrying about the 10 starters, we've been trying to just get everybody on the same page and do like all the right things. And this year was awesome, because like there was non-starters coming in and working out with me in the room before a weigh-in, even though they had no reason to be there besides just trying to help me get down to weight. Or, some guys like our 133 pounder changed like twice throughout the year. And like both times the kids were had big time wins and wrestled really well. It's just kind of a testament to like the entire team taking the training cycle seriously. Yeah. And I think that's how you create a culture of like real dominance, just like having 5-6 guys per weight class that are going to be able to compete at that same level for you.
Yeah, because you have we have 30 guys on the team, and like we said, we only have 10 starters, and so it's definitely hard to I'd say keep being a team player if you're not one of those guys. Like we had 3 guys. We went through like 3 guys at 165 at one weight. Like we just had such a deep weight at 165 in our room, and but yeah, the team is important. I think when you have guys that like who maybe aren't starting, but they're still bought in and coming to every practice and like have that energy, because we make each other better at the end of the day. Like we wrestle against each other. Like that's how we train. We compete against each other in the room every day, and so when you have a lot of guys who are bought into that and are working, and you're actively making each other better, like iron sharpens iron, it's for real. And so that just kind of like builds up the team culture, and so that's what we're trying to do. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that was a perfect segue into the Wrestling 101 section when you broke down like the starters and all that. But before we get into that, you mentioned how the team chemistry, team camaraderie is something that's very important for you guys. How did COVID affect that at all, and how were you able to sort of get things back to where it needed to be after you came back? Because we realized the Ivy League had a season off, but you guys, how were you able to come back after that year gap?
Yeah, it was really hard. like really, really hard. It's funny, like, I know we'll talk about like the NCAA tournament and stuff, but like one of the things for me that the first thing I thought about was like how much we had to go through to get back to here right now. It makes me super emotional because I mean, really, no one talks about like everybody, all Ivy League athletes, and like basically putting their lives on hold for a whole year, and told to wait while everyone else was able to compete. It was really, really difficult. But so last year, you know, it's getting towards the end of the summer, and like there was kind of no announcement from the Ivy League about like whether sports were happening or not. So like we're like, do we go back to school? Do we not? Like, you know, we were kind of going through the process, you know, about going back to school, just kind of so that if things did go back to normal, we'd be able to compete. And then finally, at like a week before school was about to start, they finally announced it.
Yeah.
So we all were like, okay, well, we got to take gap years. So automatically, you know, tried to apply because it's not like set in stone. You know, a lot of guys didn't get the opportunity to take gap years. And luckily, like basically all the kids that wanted to take gap years, basically all the starters, were able to. So it was good because like all of us were living off, like we just tried to find an off-campus spot. It was like 7 of us living in like a 3-bedroom apartment. Literally, like we had 2 kids like paying rent to live on the couch.
Yeah.
Like it was insane. But like that was the only way we could do it. That was the only way people could afford to, you know, stay in the central area where we could train together. We were lifted out of a retro fitness. Like it was insane. Like this is like a whole Division I wrestling program.
Yeah.
It's like going to like, you know, Planet Fitness to go lift. Like it was just like so bizarre. But just finding ways to get the work done, I think was really hard. But we figured it out. We kind of got into this off-season schedule. We were training for freestyle because obviously there was no NCAA season, so we only competed twice, really. A bunch of guys weren't living, like Quincy for the most part was living down in North Carolina just because he had such a great, you know, training situation with his brother and his dad and all these RTC guys down there. So, you know, it was weird. We didn't have the whole team. We had some guys on the team, but I don't know. We still figured out a way to train, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like coming back into it, like after the gap and everything, like we have these freshmen and sophomores, like kids who like would be sophomores now, but they also took gap years, so they're really like new to the school too. And like me being in North Carolina, even if they were up in Jersey, like with the rest of the team, I didn't really see these kids a lot, and so I didn't really get to know the team. And I think that kind of is really hard because like usually how it goes is like we'll get on campus like start of the year, and like we'll be able to kind of like hang out and like build that bond a little bit before we go into practice and like go into the trenches with each other. And so I think we kind of missed out on that part, just like the kind of bonding and like spending time together and like just eating together and like going out for a meal and shit like that. And so I feel like we're just now like coming out of season, and now we actually have time to do that. And so I'm really excited about that part. We're just getting kind of to know the rest of the team a little better outside of just the wrestling room.
Yeah, and I would say from anyone from the outside looking in, it seems like you guys didn't miss a beat, and I don't think people appreciate exactly what you just mentioned, the sacrifices that everyone had to make sure that when you came back, you would be competing at the necessary level. But again, y'all did exactly what was necessary to do, which I think is great to see, and I think everyone appreciates. Okay, and now this is the segment where I'm going to ask really stupid questions for you both, very, very highly skilled, experienced wrestlers. But again, I don't have much experience with wrestling.
A lot of people don't.
I bet you this is not the stupidest. These questions you're about to ask are not the stupidest wrestling questions we've ever gotten.
Okay, fantastic. 'Cause I watched a lot of wrestling to prep for this interview.
Did you research?
I had to do my research. Okay, first question. What exactly is ride time? Because I see the little clock on the side and I see it going up, and I'm like, I don't get it. What is that?
A lot of people don't understand. So it's only in college wrestling.
Okay.
It's literally not in any other form of wrestling besides the NCAA. And the idea is if you can control a guy from the top. So there's 3 positions in wrestling. There's neutral, which is where you start, right? You shake hands, whistle blows. You start on, your feet. If a guy gets on top, right? So say I took a guy down and now I'm in the top position, that's the second position is top. Third position would be bottom.
Okay.
So if I'm on top, riding time starts. And so the longer I control a guy, the higher the riding time goes. And if you have over a minute of riding time, by the end of the match, you get a point. But so like it goes. So say I rode a guy out for a minute, and then second period comes, I choose down.
Yeah.
the riding time starts going down because the other guy's on top of me. So like it'll
So it's just one clock. It's
one-
not like each guy has their own time.
Okay.
Like if he has like a minute and 5 seconds of riding time, and then I get on top, it'll start clicking down.
Down-
for his.
okay.
And once it gets to 0, then it'll start clicking up for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
and it only factors in at the end of the match. So like that point will only be allocated, even if I have like 5 minutes of riding time where it's locked
generally,
in.
yeah.
That won't come until the end of the match.
Okay.
But it's
Gotcha.
weird. You have to like factor that in, right? Like if I am on my feet and the score is tied, but he has over a minute of riding time, technically I'm down by a point.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, it's some of the matches get kind of crazy and wild like that.
And positions are the next thing that I wanted to ask you about. So you mentioned neutral, top, and bottom.
Yeah.
How are the starting positions determined in each round?
So every match starts in neutral.
Okay.
You start on your feet. You shake hands, like Pat said, and then you start wrestling. And then at the start of each, so there's 3 periods. The first period is 3 minutes. The second and third period are 2 minutes each. At the start of the second and third period, you'll flip a coin, or like however the duel decides to do it. One person is going to have choice, and so they can choose to go top, bottom, or neutral. And it's common to like go down because like a lot of people like are able to get out. And so that's kind of like a point you're gonna want to have. And so you can choose positions like that. And so you also have choice, and the other guy will get choice in the third period.
Okay. And and you might have answered this, but is any certain position an inherent advantage, or is it the type of thing where each wrestler has their own preferred starting position?
Yeah. So everyone's different. Like
Yeah, I was gonna say, like if you're wrestling someone you know is good on top, you might want to choose neutral in the second period because you don't want to give up riding time or even back points. You can give up. So in high school and like youth wrestling, the most amount of back points you can get, back points like you hold the guy on his back, it's 3. But in college, it's 4.
Did that happen in one
Recent
of your
years.
did that happen in one of your
That
matches?
was in my semifinal.
Okay.
I got a set of 4 back
Okay.
points. Yeah, but it was weird, like the whole situation. But so that's huge, right? If you don't want to get, because 4 points is really hard to come back from.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. So if you know, obviously a guy's good on top, or if you know, maybe a guy is better on their feet, probably go down. But for the most part, you choose down because the idea is like it's the easiest like point to score,
Okay.
just to get to your feet.
Is that an escape?
Yes, exactly.
Look
That's
at
an
me
escape.
go. Okay,
Yes, sir.
quick learner. Let's
Yes,
go.
don't choose down on Pat Glory though. You will not get out. You will not get out.
Okay, and next question. What is a danger point?
The danger rules.
It's hard to explain. So basically, on your feet, right? No one's in control. So if I'm on top, I'm in control. That's like they'll say the ref. You'll hear the ref say like green's on top, green's dominant, green's in control. Because when you're neutral, no one has control. No one's on top or bottom yet. In order for them to allocate who is in control, they'll have They have this rule where like if Quincy takes a shot on me and I like roll across my back and I'm kind of just sitting there, like my back is exposed to the mat, but like we're still neutral. No one's in control. In order to establish who has control, they'll start swiping.
Okay.
And so they'll go 1, 2, like danger 1, danger 2, danger 3, and then they'll give 2 points. So like if you're on your back for 3 seconds, like on your feet, you want to try to roll or get off your back.
Reposition yourself to get unexposed.
But that's hard in and of itself because you might, by trying to reposition yourself, you might give up a takedown in and of itself. But that they kind of want to avoid just like stalemates happening or like positions where nobody scores. Because in the past there was like kids that had just really weird flexible hips. They would just like lay on their back but not give up points.
Yeah.
And then they like win 1-0, and it's just like no one wants to see a person win that way. But I don't know. It's hard because it's hard to call evenly. Like some refs will say danger 1 and then stop counting even though the kid's still on his back.
Yeah.
Or other people will like count it really quickly. So it's like the consistency of it's hard. I think in wrestling referees, it's just hard to have certain things called consistently.
Yeah, there's
Is it
a
kind
lot
of
of
like baseball a little bit, where it's like their
very
discretion?
subjective
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, so you gotta have to be prepared for that. But I would say like that's a new rule.
Yeah.
And new rules are the hardest ones to kind of get right because people are still trying to figure out like, how to call it and stuff like that. So
In
the rules
wrestling,
are
I
always
feel like
changing.
in wrestling the rules change like a lot. Like there have been a lot of rule changes
every year there's like new rules that are coming.
I feel like that's pretty rare, right?
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of other sports. That, like,
Yeah, I don't
Like,
think
updated
basketball is,
changes,
double dribble's been a
Those are
double dribble for
pretty
35 years. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, it's weird that it is that way. I guess they're always just kind of trying to evolve the sport and make it kind of more
refine it a little bit.
refine it,
Yeah.
make it more fun to watch, less kind of no action matches and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And you touched on the very last one that I want to ask about, and that is a takedown. And what exactly constitutes a takedown? Because in my mind, I hear takedown, I'm like, you pick someone up and you slam them. But I was watching some of the matches, and then you'd like be on the ground, and then all of a sudden they say like takedown. I'm like, where was the takedown?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'd say it's kind of hard to do it without like illustrating it and like showing it. But
I would say like the easiest way to explain it is just control of the hips.
Okay.
Like if I like get control of the guy's 2 feet or his hips, then I have a takedown.
Okay.
Like if a guy's on his butt and I like don't have like my hands like still below his hips, they probably won't give 2 unless you have control of both of his ankles. But the second I get above his hip and start climbing up, they'll like allocate the 2. And then you obviously have dangers. One way to get a takedown.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
there's a lot of positions you can kind of like get a takedown from too. I'd say like you can if we're on the edge of the mat and I just have both his ankles and like he's like laying down flat, then like they'll give me 2. But getting kind of like behind the shoulders and getting their hands on the mat too, and being behind them and controlling the hips also.
Yeah.
But
there's this position like it's where you start in top and bottom. Basically, anytime the periods change, or if you go out of bounds and come back to the center, it's called referee's position. So like anytime that like you go from your feet to getting in referee's position on top, you'll have that's like a takedown, I guess, in like the traditional sense of the word. But again, like you said, there's a lot of different ways like you can get there. Then like say you get a takedown and like it's in a position where like not like you can't really move from there. They'll call a stalemate and then put you back in a referee's position, which is like what happened in my semifinals a couple times too.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of different weird ways that you can get points. But
yeah, I'd say the best way is kind of like just watching wrestling. It's kind of hard to just like listen to and be able to like, visualize it.
So everyone go on YouTube right now, just watch all the highlights.
Do some research.
And I'm glad that I asked those questions because I don't think anyone listening would also have understood those terms, but now it makes it that much easier.
It's funny. Quincy and I, our freshman year, did like a little segment on the Princeton Wrestling Instagram page. It was like, wrestling 101, just like trying to teach people, and it's so funny. Like it's hard to like do it, but we tried, and it's but I think people, the more they watch it, I think start to pick it up.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out to your Instagram. Whoever runs the wrestling Instagram does such a good job. Because even as someone who hasn't understood the sport, all the videos are just always so engaging that I always just find myself watching more and more. So whoever is doing that, they're crushing it.
David Alex Phillips. Plug it real quick.
Okay, and so you both obviously wrestling at the national level. You were both national finalists. When in your careers did you both realize that you were at that point where it's in the cards that I might be able to be at the highest of high levels? Was there a certain point in your career where you realized, okay, I'm pretty good at this?
Yeah, I feel like for people like me and Pat being in wrestling so long, like we've been doing it since we were kids. You kind of really start to see it. I'd say in high school, you kind of can see like the future scene of like who will be in college. And so I didn't, like the school I went to, we didn't do a lot of national tournaments in high school, but we hit a couple. And so that's kind of like the first indicator. And like off season, there's like off season national tournaments you can go to. But I started kind of finding success at these national tournaments like my senior year of high school. And I always kind of like just like had belief, like from my dad, of course, like just being who he was and like reaching what he did, just kind of like making that a standard and like a kind of like an expectation. Like it's like the work we do, like we know the preparation is good, and so just kind of like preparing ourselves to get there because it's a long road, like doing it as long as we did. But yeah, so I started seeing like hearing of Pat Glory and like in high school we weren't on the same team, and like when I was in North Carolina, like didn't even know who the kid was. But it's kind of funny looking at like the national college scene now and like seeing the names like that you've known over the years. Like there's this one kid like Real Woods. I used to wrestle with him when we were like 6-7 years old.
Yeah, I literally wrestled Real Woods at Tulsa and I was in 3rd grade.
That's insane.
So you can see this like flashes of greatness in kids like growing up and stuff. But yeah, and so I'd say like junior senior year, I knew I was like, okay, I can compete with these kids. And so
yeah, I'd say it's the same for me. Middle school, it was like, all right, get yourself as ready as you can for high school. And that's just going to like all these dual national tournaments. I'm sure Quincy like knows like Tulsa, like all these like there's kind of these major youth tournaments that the overwhelming majority of youth wrestlers that want to be at the national level will go to. So that you kind of test the waters there to say, okay, here's where I am nationally, and didn't really have a lot of success in middle school. Some kids are like these crazy, accoladed middle school wrestlers, and the next, proteges, next Kenny Mondays. You know what I mean? So I wasn't one of them, but I kind of was like always right there with those kids, and kind of gave me the confidence to be like, okay, let me just keep working. Success will come. So I went to this private high school. So one of the main decisions for me was whether I wanted to go to public school, which my public school still was very good academically. The wrestling, there had been flashes of greatness in the wrestling program, but not consistently. And then there was this private school that was 15 minutes away from me. The academics were insane. That was the school that sent multiple wrestlers to Ivy League schools every year. Yeah. And they were producing state champs and state place winners, multiple of them every single year. So it was just it was hard for me to not choose them. Yeah. So I did, and I'm glad I did, because I really don't think I'd be here without it. But took second in the state my freshman year, which was kind of demoralizing. I beat the number 1 seed and then lost to a kid who I'd beat a bunch of times. Lost again in the state finals my sophomore year. So it just I had a lot of mental stuff going on that just confidence wise was throwing me off, and I think it affected especially the national level stuff too. And I think that summer going from my sophomore to my junior year, I started seeing the sports psychologist and really working on the things that I was thinking about before the match, instead of psyching myself about the outcomes and the kind of things that I can't control. And I think that completely changed my mentality on on the outlook of wrestling and just going into matches in general, not completely psyching myself out beforehand and giving myself the level playing field that kind of lets me wrestle the best that I can.
Yeah, and I think that transitions perfectly into the World Championships that you went to in where was it, in Serbia?
Serbia,
gotcha.
Belgrade.
Yeah, and so what was that experience generally like? How was that an opportunity that you were able to get into? And obviously, I asked when you knew that you were good at the sport. You said that you had these little hurdles. I would imagine that when you're wrestling at something like the World Championships, you're like, okay, I'm pretty good now.
No, it was one of the coolest experiences in my life. It's funny. There's folk style, which is college wrestling. Mm-hmm. It's youth wrestling, and it's only done in the United States. Folk style. It's called what's the other name for it? Scholastic. It's scholastic / folk style. That's only in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Freestyle is international. Okay. So that's what his dad did at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. That's what I did in Serbia. So I never really did freestyle when I was younger. And a lot of these kids do. They go to the cadet world championships. They go to the junior world championships. They kind of do it at a very young age, and they know what to expect. And I really wish I did that, because I had no idea what to expect going out to the international tournament. It's a whole different outlook, and the whole setup of the tournament's different. The weigh-ins are different. The actual tournament is just a little bit different, and I don't know. I just kind of wasn't ready, wasn't as prepared, didn't really know what to expect. It was still really cool. I wrestled this kid from Iran who wound up taking bronze, but because he didn't make the finals, I couldn't wrestle after that. Mm-hmm. So he lost in the semifinals. So that meant I was out, but he could wrestle back in because the kid that he lost to made the final. It's just very.
It's kind of a complex.
It's very complex. Yeah. The tournament's set up out there, but it's something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. My family was out there; they came and watched. Belgrade. It's definitely not like any Western cities. I've never been into a city that was kind of had that same aura to it. Yeah. But it was still super, super cool. Seeing all these kids coming from crazy Asian countries, ex-Yugoslavic countries that basically this is these kids' livelihood. This is their future. This is the way they get their families out of whatever situation that they're in, and bring them to stardom in their countries. It's you can see the sheer emotion and passion and really just fight in these people. It's it's crazy to see.
Yeah, and we could probably spend much more time on that, but I want Quincy to be included in all that.
I was like listening to it too. I was like, oh damn.
And so obviously another very, very cool venue that you both wrestled at, which was the NCAA championships, and this was in Little Caesars Arena, which I looked up the capacity and I feel like it's something around 20,000 people. And I was looking at the highlights, and I watched both your finals match live, and you're wrestling in front of 20,000 people. What is that experience like?
It's funny you asked that because like for me personally, like once you get out on that mat, like I feel like you're so locked in. Our coach, he plays like this crowd music in the background, like of our practices when we do like practice matches sometimes. And like whenever we do a match, he always plays this crowd music. It's just constant cheering. And so I'd say he prepared us for like the loudness of it pretty well, but yeah, it was a really cool experience. Little Caesars Arena was really dope, and just like taking out like the parade of champions that we did before the matches took place, and walking out and like seeing the fans and like being like, all right, this is the moment like we've been training for. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, like Quincy said, I think as wrestlers we're so like trained to block out the outside noise. Like really the only people I can hear are the coaches in the corner and
I
the
can
ref.
barely hear them.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're just so like your adrenaline's flowing, like you're mentally just locked in, and you're just worried about scoring points and doing the technical stuff that you need to do to win. But I would say the coolest thing was like afterwards. You know what I mean? Like after the semifinals, like, just seeing like everyone, like, Princeton flags in the stands and like everyone's cheering and stuff. Super cool. It's hard to explain how, like, just how much, passion and emotion and like just sheer like drama is there. I used to go when I was younger to like the national tournaments, and I always wanted to be there, and just to be a part of it was awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine, and that's one of the, for me, this is one of those like very random things for me where it's like I appreciate and love like just a big crowd, and I love videos of like athletes. There's these videos. The one specifically I have in mind of Joe Burrow's his senior night, where the camera's walking behind him, and it just pans and shows the entire crowd, and I'm like, I can't even imagine what it's like performing in front of that sheer amount of people, and the fact that you both got to experience that, especially if it's something that you used to watch when you were a kid, that must just be like chills.
Yeah, I'd say the best part of it was like the raised stage for the finals matches, because they always raise the stage like over the course of the tournament. It's like 8 mats laid out because there's a bunch of matches going on, and it's all just like on flag ground. But for the finals, they raise the stage, and so you're elevated. And there's like they have like plants lining the side that look pretty cool, and so like just running out and like seeing the crowd and like seeing that experience in the that was probably the best part.
Yeah. And so fast forward and tournament starts, and you both make the semifinals. And as you're probably both aware, I didn't even know this. It's I think on the broadcast they said that there hadn't ever been Princeton finalists. Is that correct?
2 Princeton finals. So
okay, now
we've had like individual finals in the past, but not 2 of them in the same year.
Okay, and so you both make the semifinals, you both make the semifinals, and you know what's at stake. You know if you win this match, you're going on to the finals. You are the 3 seed, and you are the 5 seed. Mm-hmm. So, what exactly is going through your mind as you're stepping onto the mat when you know what is at stake in this one specific match?
Yeah. For me, after seeing Pat wrestle his semifinal match, because of course it goes by weight class order, and so he went first, and so I was watching his match, and his matches are crazy. Like he had a wild match with this kid who he's traded matches with back and forth this year, and it's just like a great Ivy rivalry because the kid goes to Cornell, and so they had a great match, and Pat won and just like put on a crazy performance, and I think it really helped motivate me a little more. And I was like, all right, let's go. It's my time now. And so the kid I wrestled in the semis, actually, I had wrestled twice before, and I had beat him both times. And so I was like, all right, like this is destiny. Like we're going, like we're doing this year. Yep. And so I was ready to go. I was excited.
Yeah. It's funny. We're roommates. He literally lives in the room directly next to me, in our triple room, and we've like talked about this. We're doing this. Like, this is our year. Like, we literally have dreamed about this. Like, we talked about it all the time. We're like, dude, we're going to do this together. Like, this is us. Like, it's, from the second we were freshmen, we kind of just knew that we were going to do something special. And, yeah, so going into that match, I had lost a bad match to the kid that I wrestled in that semifinal, like in the conference finals.
Yeah.
And so, it was a hard recovery. That was my first loss of the year. Like, just a lot of mental kind of gunk that was happening, and I was just like kind of like flustered in the weeks leading up to the NCAAs. So going into that match, I was like, all right, clean slate, let's just go wrestle. And just, I don't know, crazy, situations that happened in the match. And I don't know, I just remember the last 10 seconds just being like so emotionally just like shocked. You know what I mean? Like everything, like emotion just took over my whole body. I started crying like on camera and stuff. But yeah, I just knew that we were destined to do something special. And it was awesome. I was cutting weight because like that was the last match of the day, Friday night. And so I had to hop on the bike and like throw my sweats on and like keep the sweat going during Quincy's match. But I had it on my phone, but it was behind because the ESPN stream was like, I don't know, 2 minutes behind.
Yeah.
So, I had the TV right next to me that has like the live updated scores and the time and everything, and it's 3-2 in like 30 seconds. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, please. And then I just hear the announcer after the buzzer hits. It goes, for the first time in like program history, and I'm just like, yeah.
Let's go.
And everyone that's like warming up for their matches is like looking at me, like dabbing me up, like. So excited because, like, how can you not root for something like that? How can you not want to be a fan of Princeton wrestling after that? It was amazing.
Yeah, that is insanely special, especially the fact that, like you said, you're both roommates, something that you've, since you came to the program, felt like you would be able to do, and the fact that you were both able to make the finals, which is, again, insanely impressive. And then the finals matches, the mentality going in. You know that it's win and you are national champion. When you're running up to the mat, because you were just like sprinting your ass up there, are you focused on the opponent, crowd, coaches? What exactly is going through your mind when you know that this is a match where you're going for all the marbles?
Yeah, I'd say at that point, it's just kind of, at that point, it's like, you just got to wrestle. Like, there's nothing else. You don't have to worry about making weight again. It's the last match. You got nothing to lose. It's the last match you're going to wrestle this season, and it's for the title. And so I think you're just kind of locked in. We've been preparing for the moment, of course. We got a lot of belief in, like, what we could do. And so it was, at that point, it's just another match. You just got to go wrestle. And then so, yeah, I think you can't try to, like, delineate from it too much. You just have to do what we've been training to do.
Yeah, kind of going off, like, before match, I'm thinking technically, because that's what helps me stray away from these like paralyzing thoughts of like what happens if I lose this match. What are these people gonna think of me? And I've got caught in that trap before.
Yeah.
So what was good about this finals match is like I knew that no one even thought I was gonna get there. So like I was already in a position where like I have nothing to lose. I already exceeded everybody else's expectations. So I'm not doing it for anybody else besides me and besides everybody, the coaches and stuff. So I was thinking just about the game plan. Like, how am I going to score? How am I going to break, through his head, hands, defense? Just kind of thinking about the things that we had talked about with the coaching staff before the match. But yeah, I had no, like, nerves. I had no, like, I wasn't, like, stressed out or anything. I was like, let's just go do this thing. If I go wrestle the way I know how to wrestle, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I was thinking.
And so you both finished the season, tough losses in the finals, both All-Americans, both phenomenal seasons. Have you been able to reflect on just how special the season you had was?
It's kind of funny because going out, like, even though we like reached the finals and like we wanted to win. Like, it's not like we were happy with just like, getting there, even though like looking back on it, it was a great achievement and like something good for the program and like shows us trending up. But yeah, it's always like I still like look back to the match and like think like, okay, what could I have done here? Because like it's always tough. Like if you take a loss, you got to learn from it. And so but I got a lot of belief in us. Like I know what we can do, and I'm excited to come back next year because we've got another year. And so I'm just like, we know the bar has been set at this point, and so it's just kind of like, all right, we know what that stage is like, and we know what it's like to be in that moment, and so we gotta run it back. We want more. Like, we're not satisfied.
Yeah, I haven't been able to go back and watch my match yet. I'm really bad at watching matches that I lose. I eventually will. I just still kind of a little, will sting a little bit. But I think exactly like Quincy said, like I learned so much from this. I know for a fact we both did. Even just like in preparation for next year, like when we get back there, we're gonna be veterans to that situation. We're gonna know exactly what to expect. We're gonna know exactly how to like prepare for that finals match, because I don't think either of us really knew or understood like what the process was like, what it was going to look like to be a national finalist. So that being said, like, I mean, we got one more year. You know, we're going to have fun with it. You know, we're going to be enjoying every second, because this is probably our last time competing. Yeah. You know, we came here so that we could get out of the sport of wrestling, you know, afterwards. Yeah. So, but again, it's given us so much, and I think we have so much fun winning together and competing and doing all the things that we do. So we're just gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right.
And y'all are really good at this, because throughout this whole podcast, you have many times answered the follow-up question that I was going to ask. Because my last question was going to be, what's your mentality going into the last season? But you both just answered that so perfectly. So I think that is a good place. We've done 50 minutes. It always flies by. And I think with that, we can finally transition into the first segment of the show, which is the music identity segment. Honestly, David, that's the name that we're going with, music identity segment. Because since we started, we've been trying to find like a catchy name for it, and we haven't been able to come up with anything. So now it's the music identity segment. So as always, I ask the guests to come up with 5 songs to describe who they are as a person, and I always leave it open to interpretation. That's literally the only instruction I give. Everyone takes it in their own unique way, which I always like seeing how people answer it. So the floor is yours. Who wants to go first?
You want it? All right, I gotta pull up my little list. I wrote it up before I came. All right. Are we just listening out the songs, or do we have to like
you say the song and then why you chose it?
Yeah. Okay. So in no particular order, I got At Least the M by Gucci Mane. And we've been rocking with that song a lot this year, honestly, in the auction, the practice room. And I like the energy from the song, because I feel like it's like keep good company around you. It's got a good bounce to it, and I think it's pretty like feel good, like motivates me, gets me ready to go. And so that's one of them. By Any Means by G Herbo.
Good song.
That one just gets me in the zone. Got 21 on it too. And so it means like I'm gonna go get it by whatever it takes. And so and then I got Gorgeous by Kanye West, just because phenomenal album, one of the greatest albums of all time.
And I'm gorgeous.
Yeah, big Kanye fan growing up, and so I had to throw that one in there. And then I got Lost by Frank Ocean. It could really be any Frank Ocean song, just because that man's a goat. And then I got Know Yourself by Drake, because it's a banger, and you got to know yourself.
That's what's up. Solid list. Pat, how you gonna top that?
I can't. Quincy's got way better taste in music than I do. My first one, I think, it was my walkout song for the national finals, but it's just something that kind of my whole family like resonates with. It's Glory Days. I mean, it just
very fitting. You don't even have to explain. We get it.
That's no need to explain that one. Second one it's a song called "Take the Money and Run" by the Steve Miller Band.
Okay.
It's like a rock music song, but it's just one that, especially when I was going like, you know, youth practices and stuff, my dad had the CD in the car. I just would listen to the album. Just brings back a lot of memories for me. You know, the good times, the bad times, all that stuff. Song called Too Blessed. It's just like, I don't know, it makes me feel like, you know, it gets me in a good kind of vibe. It's like very, you know, uplifting song, but it's also like I do recognize like how blessed I am, like all the time. I think about it like every day, you know what I mean? Can't Leave Without It, just a great song. Yeah. I just love 21 and Gunna and Baby. It's just an amazing song. And then Pop Smoke, I love Pop Smoke, so the song Gangstas. You know, him and Young Dolph were people, like rappers that I was on like right before they passed away.
Yeah.
And it's like crazy to me. Like, I think, you know, Quincy knows how much I played Young Dolph in the room. Like, he really, like, it's emotional for me, man. Like, thinking about these people that are like on the cusp of greatness and like on the way up, and then they just like
taken away too soon.
Taken away way too soon. So I was gonna put a Young Dolph song in there too, but we'll shout him out right now.
Shout out Young Dolph. And that both phenomenal lists. Again, no comparison necessary. I like these because out of everyone that I've done, there's never been a time where I've known every single song, so that I could go back, be put onto new music, which is, again, partly the reason that I do this segment. Mm-hmm. Selfishly, I get to be put onto new songs, and then I also get to know a little bit more about each of the guests.
Hey, I don't know if you prepared any, but you got 5 songs for us.
I actually have. I've thought about when I should do my own 5 songs, because I've asked guests this for the past like 10, 12 episodes, and I've never given my list.
Right.
So I don't have any right now, but I think eventually, I don't know when the final official episode of this season will be. But I think on the season finale, I might have to. There's actually,
I like that.
Honestly, by the time that this drops, I'm gonna have announced it, and so there's actually a special episode that I recorded this past week with Governor Murphy.
Oh wow,
of New Jersey.
No way.
Yes way.
You see, he changed the official bird.
Yeah.
No, it was an
April Fool's joke. Yeah. And so for that episode, I might do a little clip at the end where I do my 5 additional songs. But I'm going to start the promo for that next Monday, and this episode isn't going to come out to the Monday after. So awesome. you guys are the first people to be let in on that secret. Hey. But yeah, I'll get that those lists of 5 songs out eventually. And then the last segment of the show, the longest reoccurring segment of the show, Tiger Confessions segment. I go on Tiger Confessions, find questions that people ask or just comments, and then read them out to my guests, have my guests react first, and then I react. So the first one, it says, and this was an interesting question that I was thinking about my answer to also. It says, what does it mean to be a Princetonian for you? Do you meet the criteria? If not, do you feel out of place at Princeton? Very curious to hear answers. And this is an interesting question.
I think my definition of like what it means to be a Princetonian has definitely evolved over my time here. I think when I first got here, I definitely had a lot of like the imposter syndrome, like what am I doing here? But just like getting to know like more people at Princeton in the time that I've been here, I feel like everyone, and I was talking about this with Muhammad, my friend Muhammad, the other day. Everyone kind of like has something special about them that like everyone like who is at Princeton like deserves to be at Princeton. They got something about them that like if you get to know like more about them, then you kind of really kind of like see it come out of them. And so I think people contribute to Princeton in a lot of ways. There's not any one way to be like a Princeton student. People excel in a lot of different areas, and it doesn't even have to be like through like your school. It could be like something you're doing outside of Princeton. But I think everyone is just kind of like, I think the school's motto is what, in the service of humanity. Yeah. And so I think everyone kind of like is doing something that like is contributing to the greater Princeton community in some type of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can resonate with Q's answer in a lot of ways. Like I felt like an imposter when I was like a freshman and kind of just getting started here. Like, you know, struggling through classes, freshman sems, like writing sem, all that stuff. Just being like, dang, like, do I like really belong here?
Yeah.
You know, like, what am I doing here? I think as you kind of are on campus more and, you know, the more people you meet and the more experiences you have here, you realize that, like, being a Princetonian to you is completely, you know, individualized. Like, it is, like, there's no one right way to be a Princeton student. I think it's just doing the best you can. And I think the people that succeed here, because like Quincy said, like everybody here is amazing. Like they are the best of the best in some way, shape, or form. Like they are like studs, you know what I mean? Like amazing. So like the people I think that thrive here the best are the ones that have like no ego and the ones that like just work really hard and like don't let anybody know about it. And then, because people recognize that, like people like see like, oh, like this person's like one of the hardest working people like here, but like no one knows about it, no one sees it, no one sees that work that they're doing. So I don't know. I think I know a lot of people that I could be like, oh, like this person doesn't get recognized for anything, but they do so much here. There's so many people like that, which it makes sense that like this is the best school in the country. Like there's such a high volume of just crazy people here.
Yeah, and I love that you both mentioned imposter syndrome because that's something that I've spoken on this podcast. I've spoken about on this podcast multiple times because freshman year was so rough for me because I started off pre-med engineer and was in so many different STEM classes where I felt like the single dumbest person on this campus. I was like, how did the admissions officers let me in here? And then it didn't take until like halfway through sophomore year that I was finally like, okay, I belong here. Not only do I belong here, but I can thrive here. And it's just interesting to think that probably most Princeton students go through that at some point, and none of us really acknowledge that about each other, where it's like who I want to meet the person who stepped on this campus and was like, yeah, I should be here.
Yeah.
Like if that person even exists at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to echo a lot of what you both just said, I don't think there's one specific way to be a Princetonian. To me, what it means to be a Princetonian is to be just passionate about whatever it is that you're doing. And I think we see that from all our peers, whether it's through athletics, through academics, through performance, through just whatever it is that you're doing. That I think is the special thing about Princeton to me, is that every single person you meet, there's something that they do that they are incredibly passionate about and they are incredibly good at. And I just love to appreciate other people's greatness. Like I have a friend Jared Harbour, shout out to him. He has his thesis show tonight. It's the last showing. I've heard such great things about it. Something that he's been putting effort in for months. You guys in wrestling have a lot of good friends on the women's basketball team. I just love to see everyone thrive at what they're good at. And this past few months especially has just been great to see people thrive.
Absolutely.
So to me, to be a Princetonian means to be passionate about something and to just put your all into it. And then again, you just see how things turn out. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't said it better.
And then a second one, and there's a theme on this show where there's always a lot of like friendship problems in Tiger Confessions, and so this one is more about friendship troubles. And it says, is there a way for a friend to grow apart from you where it doesn't really hurt or feel like you're being disrespected?
Wow. I think so. I think from experience, right, people change, I think, right? People, like, develop, and as they, like, get influenced by whatever they get influenced by, like, you might not necessarily, like, find yourself aligned with what they now believe in, although, like, maybe you were once kind of in line with what their beliefs were, their morals, their ethical values and stuff like that. Like, those can change, and I think, strong people are people that, like, can recognize, hey, like, I don't agree with this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's going to make it feel a lot less like you're letting them take their path, and you're not like, it's not like, a direct reason against you that you guys are not, necessarily in the best of terms. And now it's just kind of, you guys are taking different paths. Yeah. And I think it takes a strong person to like recognize that and like let that happen, as opposed to being like, oh, like, but this person's my friend, so like, let me be influenced, even if it's negatively, by them because they're my friend, and like just go along with what they want to do. Yeah. So I think especially in college, like you see a lot of people change in that way, and as they mature, kind of going in a separate path, and being strong in yourself, I think makes it less like a fight, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely some friendships that aren't meant to last forever, but they all serve their purpose. Like you can enjoy like a certain time period with a person and like have really special experiences with them, but you might grow out of it and like not have those same experiences to relate to. That doesn't really like bind you together anymore. That where you don't need to like be like talking as much. But you're still. It doesn't mean like you're not on good terms. Like you just don't really need to be as interactive with them anymore. And so I think definitely you can grow out of friendships, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like they can serve you in that moment, and you can always cherish those moments, like looking back on it, even if you aren't like creating new moments. And so I think definitely that's something that like more people should be like willing to do, even though it's like hard to let go of some friendships. But if they're not really, like, they don't have to be like serving you, I'd say. But if it's kind of like it has to be forced, then I'd say like you should be like open to like maybe not trying to force it as much and just appreciating like what you had.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of the stuff that you both just said. I think about this all the time, and I've spoken about this, I feel like, on the podcast before, how you come in as a freshman and you kind of cast your net as wide as possible. Just, again, your college, you want to meet as many people as possible. And then I think end of freshman year, start of sophomore year is when a lot of friend groups will start to realign, and I think it happens very naturally. And I think back on my freshman year, and there were some people that I was really close to back then that I'm not close with right now, and there was nothing disrespectful about the way that we stopped being friends. There was nothing that hurt anybody's feelings. It was just natural progression as people started to grow into themselves and really figure out who it is that they want to be. So yeah, I agree with what you guys just said. There's obviously some people who are just like rude and they might be disrespectful about stuff, but I think a lot of the times when friendships end, it is just a very natural thing, because kind of like you said, some friendships aren't meant to last forever. They run their course, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Everyone's allowed to grow and change, and again, as long as no one's being disrespectful in any way, like that's just a part of life. Yeah. Absolutely. But with that, we've done an hour and 3 minutes. This has been a phenomenal episode. Thank you both.
What an honor for appreciate you having us
Honestly,
on.
this is awesome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on. Do you both have any final words for the people?
Just want to give all my fellow Princetonians some love right now as we're in like thesis, JP stuff, independent work getting towards the end of the year. Like it's been a crazy year, but we're doing it, y'all. So shout out to the gang.
Couple more weeks.
Couple more weeks. We're almost there. But yeah, this again, one of my favorite episodes that